Welcome to Your American Dream. I'm Anisha Jennings, and today I'm excited to welcome Anne Harper to the show. Anne is the co founder and chief operating officer of Unlock, a tech enabled platform transforming the future of work, and the founder of Harper Consulting LLC. With an impressive track record of designing award winning talent programs at major companies like Sony Pictures, Eventbrite, Sally Beauty, and DreamWorks, Anne specializes in building exceptional cultures that fuel revenue growth. As an adoptee immigrant and self described fear facer who's jumped from 14,000 feet and swum with sharks, she brings a unique perspective to talent transformation. Welcome, Anne. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Anisha. I didn't realize that's a mouthful. That's like a whole lot of story right up front. But yeah, let's get it out there, get rolling.
Yes, yes. So, yeah, tell us a little bit about your journey from, your early childhood to being in corporate to being an entrepreneur now. Tell us what Anne is all about.
Sure, I'm happy to do that. So I always think of this as my origin story, right? So, and increasingly lately, I've been sharing it more openly because I think I had many decades of corporate conditioning where, you're supposed to keep up a professional facade. And that means not showing too much of like the real person behind, the professional. So I'm really happy to have this platform to share some of those parts of my personal story. So the story is I was originally found as a baby in South Korea, in Seoul. And because I was walking, I was alone, but I was walking. So when I was found, I think I was taken to a local police station. They weren't sure if I had been in like a tragic car accident that claimed my parents, or if I was lost and had wandered off from, my caregivers, or if I had been abandoned. So for that reason, I was taken to a hospital and held there for about a month just in case someone showed up, some kind of caregiver looking for me. And that did not happen. And so I was, one of many children at the time. It was like a very difficult time internally in South Korea. There was a lack of social services infrastructure and stuff. So I was fortunate. I was actually placed in a private foster home. I stayed there for almost a year and a half, and I was found when I was about 14 months old. So I was nurtured there. I have a couple of artifacts, physical artifacts that are like so important to me now. I have them in a shadow box. This red, white, and blue poncho and these cute little velvet red, white, and blue shoes that my foster parents dressed me in to make my trip to the suburbs of New Jersey, halfway around the world. And that's when my American part of the journey began. I was 2.5 at the time, and I was the first and only child at that point of my parents, who are white, and they were early 20s at the time. So ready to start a family, and they were having some difficulties. And so that is what brought their journey and mine into, connection. And over the course of several years, then I became one of 5 adoptees. We adopted another Korean brother. And then years later, we adopted my 3 youngest brothers who are Puerto Rican. And I mention all of that because it gives you an idea of like culturally how rich of a tapestry our family was. Just even basic things like going to church or going to a restaurant, we definitely drew a lot of attention to ourselves. And so that was definitely a part of my identity. And I think that, along with many other things, really helped lay the foundations for what became my personal passions, my areas of interest and study, and really the foundations of the work that I do with people and culture and transformation. So I'll stop there, but I'm happy to pick up on the professional part and how that unfolded too. But that's kind of the early stages that, was set for who I am today.
Amazing. Thank you so much for sharing that. That is such an amazing story of, now your journey and looking back on the reflection of your journey. That is a very powerful story. So thank you so much for sharing that. So yeah, tell us a little bit about your professional professional journey, where it started, how it started, what were you drawn to in school, how did you pick your career, and now here you are. So tell us about that journey.
Yes, so I will try to make it as short and sweet as possible, but it was not a straight line. It was definitely not a linear path. I will say early on, I think this comes from being an adoptee, from being an immigrant, from being an oldest child. I was pretty early wired to be a high achiever, a rule follower, a type A driven, do, perform, achieve type of person. And so I mentioned that because it really was the foundation for having like a really strong work ethic early in life when school is your work. I was a very high achieving student. I signed up for extracurricular activities and like all the stuff that you do to try to stand out. And at that time, you were trying to always have a well rounded resume. I was thinking about those things pretty early in life. And also, I had a lot of fun doing it. But everything from like singing in the choir, playing Maria in West Side Story, what else? Cheerleading, varsity cheerleading, going to like choir and cheerleading camps, stuff like that. We also did a lot in our family in the community to give back. So whether it was helping to feed the homeless at soup kitchens and or like welcoming like people into our home that might be down on their luck. So I would say I was just very aware of like social dynamics and how our efforts could really drive change for other people. And I mentioned that because that was like kind of the personal origin and the basis for me really feeling drawn to that kind of study and work later in life. So all throughout high school, as soon as I could work, I did. I obviously was babysitting for all of my brothers, but then I also was doing paid babysitting. And then I worked a number of retail jobs and got my first office job through a volunteer thing when I was in high school. So by the time I graduated high school, I already had like actually years of professional experience under my belt. So I had learned a lot of things that many students don't. Things like business, office etiquette, and stuff like that. So I went off to UCLA. I'm a proud Bruin. Actually, I was just recently elected to the APA UCLA Board of Directors. So really excited. And that was a super interesting part of my identity and a real pivot point for me because where I had grown up in New Jersey, our family really stuck out, but also it just happened to be the case that where we lived in the suburbs, there was not a really significant Asian community or population. There are plenty of places in New Jersey where there are huge Asian communities, but we didn't live in one. So ironically, the only Korean people that I knew off the top of my head were our family's dry cleaner and my Taekwondo instructor. So like just living into all the stereotypes. And but so when I moved from New Jersey to Southern California and walking on campus at UCLA for the first time, it was really a culture shock for me because there are so many different types of Asians there. It's just a normal part of the fabric in that kind of academic space, especially in Southern California. So that really opened my eyes to different ways of thinking about what high achieving was, thinking about what success was, because then I kind of shifted my focus. I felt like I had really done the academic stuff. I had really done the achieving stuff. But what I was really missing was some of the social stuff, some of the interpersonal dynamic stuff, because I'd always been responsible for my younger brothers and myself. And it was the first time I had a real taste of freedom. So I really enjoyed, seeing what it's like to be like a teenager, like, and then early 20s in college. And I had a long route. Halfway through school, I had to drop out, or I chose to drop out. My parents were starting to put my younger brother through college. And I was very afraid that I wouldn't do well working at the same time that I was in school. I'm not sure why I thought that because I had done it when I was younger in high school. But I think just the rigor of the, academics at UCLA, I thought I would become a bad student. I wasn't really ready to do that. So I had the genius idea to take a break from school and start working. And I thought, I'll just save up some money and go back. That's when I got my first adult job. Had a series of jobs though. I really hadn't found a true purpose yet. I was an assistant or, whatever it was, an executive assistant in a commercial real estate developer's office. I was the hostess receptionist for a private club for like political dignitaries and affluent members of the community. I just did a host of different things. I wasn't a job hopper, but it was really just about getting a job or the next job. And sometimes I even had 2 or 3 jobs just because I was young and had plenty of energy. I loved making money and having the freedom that bought me. I never lived at home again after that. So I've pretty much been on my own, financially really ever since that point at 20, I guess I was. So that was really a number of years. And I wouldn't say that I was lost. I would say more so like I think of Jamie Foxx, who tells the story about his grandma, Tally, making him do all these different things like learning to play the piano, getting involved in sports. And I think that's what it felt like for me later in retrospect. All of these things along the way, I was picking up skills. I was learning different areas of expertise. I was learning how to use different programs and
Mm-hmm.
technologies, learning how to think about marketing and sales and customer service, and
Right.
also just learning how to speak to people and how to talk to strangers and make them not feel strange. And so those are all things that really served me well when I finally did find my footing in a true career path, which was at DreamWorks. That's the first time I found my way to the people side of things. I started
Mm-hmm.
off originally as office manager and executive assistant to the general counsel. So working as office manager for business and legal affairs. But I really took a risk going there because I took a cut in pay, I took a cut in title, and I did it with intention though, because I thought all of the series of jobs I've had, they were a means to making a living, but they didn't necessarily have a lot of meaning. And so that was the first time I thought, I love entertainment, the transformative power of being taken to another place or learning about another culture or country that you wouldn't have physically had the opportunity to see. Thinking that I could work somewhere in that industry was really interesting to me. And so that is what led me to actually my first job in HR, which was in recruiting at DreamWorks. And then it led to, a longer path and career that included global talent acquisition and DEI at Sony Pictures. I also worked for a global architecture and engineering services firm where I got to travel internationally for my work. I've just been really fortunate, I think, because I had that hard work and just very disciplined work ethic. It helped me to really contribute everywhere I went. And so I was rewarded with more responsibility and promotions and the likes of that. So that was like kind of the first and second part of my career. And then I started really wanting to make a bigger impact, which meant going smaller. I wanted to be a big fish in a small pond instead of a small fish in a big pond. And that's when I started doing consulting and helping companies to grow and scale. And I've been doing that successfully ever since until it led me to this most recent endeavor where I'm the co-founder of a tech startup. And that brings all of my experience together. It's really leveraging my human capital, understanding of leadership dynamics, what it takes for people to be successful, how to build teams and organizations. And we bring a lot of the best of that into our tech platform so that we can serve a lot more people and bring them together. It's a
Wow.
long story. It's a long
Wow.
career journey too. I've got a lot of years, decades actually under my
Yes.
belt.
My goodness, that's amazing. That's such a beautiful, powerful story. And there's so much to unpack here. So every time, just listening to you, I felt like your life is go, go, go. I'm sure you had moments of like, lows, highs, and just stillness. So, how did you deal with those different moments in your life? Did you ever feel like, oh, I'm doing too much, this is too much for me, or I'm not doing enough? Or, I'm happy where I'm at? Or like, how did you follow your calling?
Yeah, it's such a great question. And that is exactly, so there were like some really pivotal like paradigm shifts along the way. So the first one, I mentioned it, but I didn't explicitly say that's what it was. But when I decided to go to DreamWorks, it's one of the things I'm proudest of, to be honest. I mean, it sounds like on paper, that seems like obvious, like who wouldn't want to go there? But for me at the time, it was a huge risk because I was making really good money working downtown LA in the tallest building west of the Mississippi. I felt really like a grown up. I had the trust and lots of responsibility of people I really admired and respected. And I had a lot of opportunity available to me. But I had heard this expression once and it always stuck with me. And I realized it applied personally. And it is this: it doesn't matter how high you climb on the corporate ladder if the ladder is leaning against the wrong building. And so, ironically, I'm in the tallest building west of the
Wow.
Mississippi, but I wasn't inspired by the work. And I knew I could do a great job and I knew I would get rewarded for it, but I didn't have a sense of why that mattered. And
Hmm.
I think going back to those early roots with my family values of just wanting to make a bigger impact, knowing that there's a way to be of service to others, being able to see how your work improves other people's
Yeah.
lives or connects to other people,
Hmm.
that started feeling really important to me. And again, that idea of just not one more job, but an actual place where I could like put down roots and deepen and build some true expertise. That's what drove me to make the decision to go to DreamWorks. And again, here's why it was a risk and why I'm proud of taking the risk. Number one, it was a huge cut in pay. I was literally losing 50% of my income practically. Back then, I was young and single. I could afford to do that. But number two, the general counsel had gone through 7 or 8. Someone had told me like, hey, just be aware of it. You know, she'd gone through like 7 or 8 different office managers in a year's time. And other people who were vying for the same job, like let that scare them away. And what I thought is, I am really hardworking and very resourceful and smart. I've learned a lot of things and I don't want to be limited by other people's fear. So let me go and meet her and just decide for myself. And I did exactly that. And I can tell you, I knew exactly why other people hadn't worked out. And it's because she's brilliant. She's great at what she does. And I thought she's the kind of person who would be really inspiring to work for. She's the first executive I think I ever worked with who actually worked like a 9 to 6, a regular 9 to 5 schedule. Everyone else I knew was like burning the candle at both ends and like really taking pride in like burning themselves out, frankly, making all the sacrifices. That was the work ethic I had been shown. And what she showed me instead was just be really exceptional, really focused, very productive, and you can have a life too. You know, she skied, she traveled everywhere. And it really taught me how to be more disciplined about finding that work life integration. And it taught me to just be more concise. I'm not demonstrating it here today because in my personal life, I'm very chatty. But at work, it taught me to take very complex situations and boil it down to like 3 sentences because it had to fit on her BlackBerry and it had to end with a simple yes or no or ABC question that she could answer from a plane halfway around the world.
Wow.
Um,
Wow.
that was one really important pivot point for me because I knew that if I wanted to find fulfillment, I was going to have to do something uncomfortable. And that is
Mhm.
something I've always really embraced. It's never fun, but I've always embraced it because I just know that having the courage to push through something like that is what separates out like you from the rest of the pack. A lot of people will hit a ceiling based on their own fear or discomfort with discomfort. So
Yeah.
that was something that was really pivotal. And on the other end of my entertainment career, when I was leaving Sony Pictures, I loved that company. I loved the people I worked with and I loved the work I was doing. But it had gotten so out of balance again. I had gotten a series of promotions. I had a lot of responsibility. I was really the right hand man to the head of the department. So running the day-to-day operations of global recruiting and really hands-on when we did an entire DEI transformation there. But I was literally working like 9 to 9 every day. And I would fall asleep trying to eat dinner, like literally waking up with crumbs on my chest. And it was at great expense, like personal expense.
Mhm.
Didn't have time. I would try to date on and off, but I just didn't have time for a true life. I
Right.
felt guilty a lot of the time because I am part of a big family. I was always very close to my family. I just didn't have that time to spend with them. And I really still at that time was wearing like being so busy as a badge of honor. But
Mhm.
I literally burnt my body and my mind out. And so I made a decision to focus on finding more balance. But to be fair, just because I was ready to change didn't mean that the company was going to expect anything different from me. And so we parted ways. And I actually took that entire, whatever, it might have been the summer off just to focus on rebuilding my physical health, my mental health. I had a therapist, I had a trainer, got a huge elliptical machine in my bedroom and just focused on learning to be present, learning to tune in to what I'm actually feeling and to learning to say no to things that don't serve me. It was really the first time I was learning to set healthy boundaries, basically. So that was another pivotal point. So that's why I say it wasn't just an obvious upward trajectory. It was a lot of this. And each time I learned something new about myself and grew stronger and more aware. And I think more empathetic also to just the range of experiences that people out there are going through. And I really have learned not to take things at, surface face value, because we never know what people are struggling with. So,
Absolutely. Oh my goodness. Thank you so much for sharing that. That is like, I feel like many people are in that spot, and not too many people realize that they need to get out of that, wearing that as a badge of
right.
honor. So when you decided to take control of your health and, just focus on you, what was like the breaking point? You said, like, no, this is not what I'm going to do. I need to focus on myself. And what would be your advice to people who are stuck in that cycle right now?
Well, for me, it was a couple of things. The first obvious thing to me was, I always would go to the doctor regularly. And I remember my doctor saying, "You don't have diabetes, but your blood sugar is higher than I want it to be. Let's keep an eye on that. You don't have high blood pressure, but it's higher than I want it to be. Let's keep an eye on that." Cholesterol, all of the things, right? All of the markers of you're taking good care of yourself, I was almost failing on. And I just thought, why am I waiting for like my body to break down to turn around and then fix it when it's a crisis? Because then I will have no choice, right? I thought, I can't ignore what my body is telling me. And so I just knew I had to physically find more balance, get out more, like actually see the sun, not work, day and night. So that was one big part of it. The other big part of it was just, like I said, I had never really had time to just focus on myself and building relationships. Like I had dated, but I really never was invested. My identity was all based on my work. So therapy and just through my own internal work, I just really had to figure out, who am I without the work? What does that person look like? And that was also uncomfortable. But getting grounded in that and making space for it is really what I think allowed. So before, I was like a workhorse, just like on the treadmill, right? Mindlessly just doing and achieving. And there's a thing called the hedonistic treadmill. And that's like, you find something fun and indulgent and decadent that you love, whether it's money or extravagant vacations, but then you just keep raising the bar because your appetite for it grows. It never is going to really be satisfied because you'll always get a new baseline and then you'll want the next thing. And I realized I had been doing that with money, career status, stuff, the trappings of, my life. I've lived in beautiful places. And I just thought, this isn't really sustainable. And more importantly, I don't want to do life alone. I, had a big close knit family. So I had that, but I hadn't invested in relationships, friendships, even, and dating relationships in meaningful ways. So I just took those external markers and then just did the work to be still, to sit in the discomfort, to care for myself, to put that on the list. I remember Winona Judd saying a long time ago, like she kept bumping her priorities and needs down and just never got herself back on the list. She was so busy doing so much for everyone else. And I think that's actually very common with immigrant mindsets. It's very much in many cultures. It's like, do the hard work, don't draw attention to yourself, don't ask for too much, be grateful for what you have. And so I just had to really learn to be selfish and self-centered. Because if I wanted to be around to serve anybody, I had to be here physically able to deliver and show up as like a whole person. So that's when that became a priority for me. Instead of external markers of success, I felt like I had enough of those under my belt. I really wanted to focus on, what does wholeness look like? What do I need to change and make room for in my life? And I will tell you, one of the really cool things was, after I did that work, or as I was doing that work, I could really feel my energy shifting. I'm very in fifth gear right now, but I'm also able to just be totally present and still enjoy a book. And when I slowed down, I started dating again. I met someone and we had a whirlwind relationship and he proposed, and I thought, this is the universe's gift to me for like making all these sacrifices and then slowing down enough to be willing to receive that. So
Yeah.
I was really like very validated. I will say the engagement ended later, but at that moment in time, that was exactly what I needed to do. And that was like the universe saying, well done. Here's a treat. Here's a reward for doing that. And I would just say to people, like, tomorrow is not guaranteed. And so we have so many different ways of defining success. Don't be locked into just that external social definition or your family's expectations, those definitions. Just figure out, like, I always tell people when I'm coaching executives and stuff, I say, like, imagine yourself at your 80th birthday party. Who's there in the room with you to celebrate? What do they think you're exceptional for? Why do they want to be in your life? And more importantly, like, what is your legacy? Earning money, being able to be generous and take care of other people is certainly a part of that, but it's only a piece. And really, it's cliche to say it now, but like, on your deathbed, nobody thinks like, oh, but my PowerPoint animations were so good.
Yeah.
So that was, I would say maybe just do that exercise. Think about what will really matter to me. And maybe not even when you're 80, just think about how different your life could be 10 years from now. If you started thinking about what you could do differently, just start laying some foundations. It doesn't have to be major paradigm shifts like I did. If you do small incremental steps, you don't have to get the big smack in the head. You can just start navigating. There's that saying about, if an airplane just gets 1 degree off their path, they will end up in a completely different city. And so if you can make these small adjustments now, you could end up in a totally different destination. So where is it you want to go? And what can you start doing now to prepare yourself to be ready for that and to invite that opportunity into your life?
Wow. Wow. Thank you for sharing. I feel like we need a part two with you just because there's so much to unpack. But let's move on to Unlock. So, what inspired the co founding of Unlock?
Yeah, well, so I had this deep background in people and culture. I had done a lot of work in executive search, also helping to grow and scale some boutique search firms. And then I had been invited to build an advisory services business from the ground up for an executive search firm that wanted to add that offering. All of that led me to know that I really had a lot of expertise that was of value to people. And along the way, I had helped many other people get very rich. And to be honest, that was one of the first times that I thought, how do I get myself on that list? How do I use my expertise to build my own retirement plan and my own exceptional lifestyle? Because it had always been good enough. But I thought there's an exponential difference between the rewards that I'm getting and the people that are benefiting from my expertise. So that was, for me, one of the drivers. I was actually going to go back to consulting when I found out that a couple of my former colleagues were starting a startup. And they were best friends. They had talked about it for years. And so when they reached out and said they were building this thing, I thought, yeah, I would rather do that. Like, I can be a loner. I have had my own consulting, Harper Consulting, and I had been very successful doing that. But I still do love community and connection and complementary strengths and stuff. And we realized that we really did have complementary strengths. Their background and their expertise was on the search side, the executive recruiting side. And so bringing those together really we didn't even know exactly what we were going to build or what problems it would solve, but we just knew that we had enough expertise that we could figure it out. So we formed Unlock. We started building on the things we already knew how to do. So offering professional services to build the infrastructure and, put some money in the bank. And that gave us the opportunity to brainstorm and ideate about what could we build? How could we take this expertise online and create an experience that more people can have? So instead of charging $1,000 for an executive coaching session with us, how could we make that $100 for someone else, and being able to offer it at scale? So that was really the foundation. And what it's grown into now I'm really proud of it. It's live. We have our first B2B paid customers. We had our MVP launch just, 7 months ago. And we're like real actual members in the platform. And what it is it's really a platform that serves as the infrastructure to fuel networks, communities, organizations, particularly small and mid-sized groups, people that really need to find ways to connect and collaborate, especially in decentralized work models, because a lot of them, they have traditional tools. They have email, they might have like a messaging platform or social media. But what we created brings all of the most important elements for connection and collaboration into one single dashboard. And so that's how communities are using it now, to promote and advertise events that they're putting on, to be able to share opportunities with each other. So it's like your own like inner circle, but virtually you can access it. And then it supports people meeting up in real life too. So that's where we are now. And we are just at the front end of it, but it's so exciting to think about how many people it could be serving, thousands and then hundreds of thousands and eventually millions of users and communities.
Wow. So, how can people sign up for it? What is the
Oh,
procedure of being in that community? And
yeah.
what can people expect to, like, work with you and your team?
So it can be, our company website is Our Unlock, OUR, unlock.com. And if you go to the website, you can sign up. We're offering it on a free trial basis for individual members right now. So now is a great time to do it. And they'll have full access to the platform, all of the learning modules. We have fireside chat guests and expert insights, and it's also part personal CRM. So sign up there and we'll take you through the process, get you onboarded. And then we also do have our professional services side of the business that is able to offer, I personally do like fractional CPO work and consulting work for, I've built award-winning programs like for talent acquisition and DEI. And then we also do like world-class executive search. So all of those offerings still exist, but the platform is free and available to anyone. So definitely check it out and see how it might help you. It helps you to scale your own talents and to connect meaningfully with people that you should be talking to, but it gets lost in the day-to-day hustle of doing the work. So it's a way to serve yourself, really.
Amazing. So, we will have that in the show notes, the link to
Thanks,
the
Anisha.
to your website. So, you started coaching and consulting. Do you still do it? And if somebody wants to work with you, how can they reach out to you?
Yes. Thank you so much. So yeah, harperconsulting.com is still up as a website. It's always kind of been in the background. I've done it on and off at different stages of my life, and my co-founders, we all know that like if we need a side hustle during this like startup building phase, that's just what we have to do. And I'm the girl that was spinning 2 or 3 jobs at a time when I was in my 20s and other people were hanging out at bars and stuff. So I definitely like to stay busy. Yeah, I do executive coaching. Particularly, I think I'm great at helping people who have typically felt like underrepresented or underserved, maybe who are pivoting or just feeling like they want a guide along the way. I think that my gift is really helping people understand what their capabilities are, to understand and even see and amplify the gifts and natural talents that they have, and to connect that with their personal values and purpose. And then to create an actionable plan to get them there. So yeah, I'd be happy to welcome new clients. You can reach out to me. My contact info is there. And it's also Leanne, Leanne at harperconsulting.com.
Perfect. Thank you so much for sharing that information. So, from your experience, like from your childhood, being the oldest kid, having 3 jobs, and everything that you've shared with us, what would be like 3 takeaways that you can say from your life now that that you wish you knew when you were starting off? And what is that advice that you would give somebody new who is starting their life now, who's an immigrant, who is probably a woman of color, who's wanting to start her own career or her own business? What would be your takeaway?
Number one, it's always a good idea to bet on yourself. And by that, I mean, whether that's investing in a program because you have an interest in something on the side, that's me deciding to take a cut and pay, but betting that I could prove my value and create a new career trajectory for myself, and it paid off. Betting on yourself means speaking up for yourself and advocating, knowing your value. Another thing that I would say is really important is, it's like there's this old African proverb: if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And I would say all of the most meaningful things that I've done personally and professionally, they're all connected to relationships and people whether that's the people I got to share those memories with, whether it's the people who opened the doors for me. When I got that first job at DreamWorks, it's because someone opened a door for me. The same thing for Sony Pictures. So there's so much more that you can do, and your impact and reach on the world is exponentially bigger when you cultivate relationships. Don't wait until you need something from someone. Invest in the relationships that matter, both now and the ones that will serve you in the future. Don't think of it transactionally. Think of it as just an investment in your own well-being, because we all need community. And then third, I would say, well, I already am a self-declared fear facer, but I would say it really has served me well because, I think there are a lot of people who think that bravery is like being fearless. And I think life is scary. If you are challenging yourself and you're growing and you want to learn, then things will be scary because you don't know how to do those things. It means you have to be vulnerable and be willing to do something badly before you can develop any kind of aptitude and certainly any expertise. So don't run away from your fear. Start small, but take chances, and like learn to sit through the discomfort, learn to feel vulnerable, learn to share those honest feelings with people. I think people really appreciate authenticity and transparency now more than ever also. But every time you face a fear, it builds your courage and makes the world infinitely bigger. So if I can swim with sharks, for example, or do a solo safari in South Africa, then pitching to a $5 billion company is not nearly as scary. Or writing a keynote speech for a conference is not as scary. And you can do that in your own life, in your own small ways by, taking those small steps to face little fears. And then eventually you'll find that you're unstoppable.
Thank you so much for sharing all of that. And it's been such a pleasure talking to you. And like I said, I think we definitely need a part two with you. I wish you all the best with your app and your consulting. And I hope a lot of people listen to this episode. And, there's so much gold here. So thank
Yes.
you so
And
much for being on the show.
thank you, Anisha, also just specifically for creating the space for immigrants, for people who are wanting some guidance and support, and just knowing you're not in it alone. There are other
Yes.
people who have forged these paths too. And so hopefully you'll take that as inspiration.
Yes,
Thanks for
absolutely.
creating this.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Anisha.
As we conclude our conversation with Leanne, remember that building exceptional culture starts with seeing the potential in every individual. If you're ready to showcase your talent transformation expertise through a website that attracts top tier clients, I'd love to help create that digital platform through custom WordPress or Squarespace websites. This is Anisha Jennings reminding you that sometimes unlocking others' potential begins with embracing your own story. Until next time.